What's going on, everybody? Welcome into episode 174 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast on this Monday, July 27, 2026. I'm your host, Zach Malum. But before we get started, please subscribe below. Follow all of my social accounts. Let's start things off in the world of baseball, as both of your teams were in action this weekend, and we'll start things up in the Bronx with the New York Yankees as they headed down to Philadelphia for a three-game set against the Philadelphia Phillies. The Yankees, of course, were coming off the series loss to the LA Dodgers last weekend, coming off the All-Star break. Then they end up taking 2 out of 3 from the Pittsburgh Pirates at Yankee Stadium with the doubleheader on Wednesday. They get a day off on Thursday and then head down to Philadelphia against a tough Philadelphia Phillies team that has been really good in the National League East. They've had their problems here and there, especially on the defensive side, and we'll talk about that in just a bit. But looking at the Yankees in this series, they go in and win the first game of the three-game set, 1-0, and it was all about Cam Schlittler in this game. He was really strong and really proved why he's in the Cy Young race in the American League. 7 1/3, 3 hits allowed, no runs with no walks, and 12 strikeouts. Did not allow a run in this game. And on the other side, Jesus Luzardo was really good in this game. He just made one mistake to Paul Goldschmidt, and Goldschmidt hits a solo bomb into right field, a solo shot, and it gives the Yankees a 1-0 lead. That's how it would end, and David Bednar comes in after Brent Hedrick did a great job in the 8th inning. Schlittler goes out into the 8th inning, and then Hedrick closes the door with 2/3 of an inning, 1 hit allowed, no runs with no walks, no strikeouts, 20 pitches, but gets out of a bases loaded jam. And then David Bednar comes in for the save. He pitches an inning, no hits, no runs with no walks, and a strikeout. And Bednar gets his 19th save of the season. So the Yankees take the first game of the three-game set. Then they go into the second game, and it was a real fight for a long portion of it, but Ryan Weathers did a great job of weathering the storm, no pun intended, with 5 2/3 innings pitched, 6 hits allowed, 1 earned run with 1 walk and 7 strikeouts. The Yankees pitching is the difference once again. They locked things down, and Ryan Weathers, who allowed 6 hits in this game, did get some massive outs in one of his best outings of the year against a tough Phillies lineup. He pitches 97 pitches and gets through 5 2/3. The Yankee bullpen right after that, Shavili with Blackburn, and then Bednar to close it out once again. The Yankees win 3-1 in the second game of the three-game set. I think the big talking point of this game was the offense and the Yankees' ability, with Austin Wells hitting a home run after the Yankees went down 1-0. Wells hits a solo bomb, and there's not been a lot of that from Austin Wells so far this season. So good to see, even though the Yankees are still interested in a catcher before the trade deadline. We'll get to that in just a moment. But then the Yankees have Cody Bellinger with an RBI single, and then Jason Dominguez with a solo shot in the 7th inning, a bomb into left field, 420 feet. And the Yankees end up taking a 3-1 lead. That's how it would finish. 3-1 is the final, and the Yankees win the series. They still have one more game to go. Sunday's game was not great for the Yankees. They really got attacked early on by the Phillies. It was 6-0 in the blink of an eye in the 3rd inning when Alec Bohm hit a bases clearing double into center field to make it 5-0. Bryson Stott added on with an RBI single. Will Warren got punched in the mouth in this game. 3 innings, 6 hits, 6 earned with 2 walks and 5 Ks. Not a great outing for him. And of course, he's on the trade block, it seems, if it seems that the Yankees will go for a bigger target in the trade market this year. So we'll see what happens with Will Warren, but not a great sign for him. Coming back into the rotation, he did have a stretch where he went out of the bullpen and came in the other day against the Pittsburgh Pirates out of the bullpen with the doubleheader. The Yankees did not have a lot of arms, so they threw Warren in the bullpen. He ends up coming back into the rotation in one of his worst outings of the year as the Phillies blow him up for 6 earned on Sunday. So this one ended 11-4. Yankees tried to fight back. They had a couple of chances. It was 6-3 after Anthony Volpe hit an RBI double in the 5th inning, but the Yankees could not hold on in the 6th, and they Phillies offense just had to wake up at some point, and they did in this game. So the Phillies win the final game of the 3-game set 11-4, but a good series win for the Yankees. After losing to the Dodgers 2 out of 3, they end up beating the Phillies 2 out of 3 down in Philadelphia. So that's a great sign for the Yanks, especially with the injuries that they're dealing with. And the big one is Cody Bellinger now, who did miss yesterday's game. He's on the 10-day IL right now with a hamstring strain, and not a great sign for the Yankees, who are without Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton already in that outfield. Of course, Stanton the DH, but there's a lot of guys that the Yankees need to replace in that outfield. They dealt with injuries with Trent Grisham earlier in the year. That's the baseball season for you, but I think Cody Bellinger is the best fielder of all of those guys, the best fielder on the team. So that's a big loss on the defensive side for the Yankees, and we'll see how they adjust in terms of the trade market. I think it could be time for another bat in terms of an outfielder as well, just based on they have a lot of injuries right now, and you gotta get somebody to really replace the impact or just settle the impact of both Aaron Judge and Cody Bellinger out of the lineup. But the Yankees right now are not focused on that just yet. They are focused on the road trip now out into the Midwest, and it's coming in Chicago, where the Yankees play 2 straight series in Chicago against both Chicago teams. It starts off with a 4-game series tonight against the Chicago White Sox, then a 3-game set on the weekend against the Chicago Cubs. So we'll start with this series against the White Sox, and the White Sox have been really good so far this year. First place in the American League Central, and nobody really saw that coming after it was a disaster the last couple of years for Chicago. They end up bouncing back, and they are 6 games over 500, 32-19 as well on their home field. So we'll see what happens. 7:40 tonight. Max Fried gets the ball for the Yankees, 4-3, 2.97 ERA on the year. He was absolutely phenomenal in the doubleheader against the Pirates last week. So he comes back very strong, and he will probably ramp it up just a little bit more. Only had around 60 pitches in his first outing, got through 5 innings somehow in that outing, and now all of a sudden he goes against the White Sox. A tough lineup here, and we'll see what happens with them. Noah Schultz gets the ball for Chicago. He's 3-7 with a 6.04 ERA. The Yankees have a lot of firepower still in this lineup, even with the injuries. So we'll see if they can get to Schultz tonight. 7:40 start. Make sure you tune into that one later. But briefly talking about the Yankees trade deadline, and I think the Yankees, the biggest target has to be Mason Miller. But I don't know if that's likely to happen, considering the Padres are still sitting back and forth with whether they are going to sell him or not. I think the price for Mason Miller as well is just going to be a little bit too much at this time of year. I think it's going to entail George Lombard Jr. to go the other way to San Diego, and I think the Yankees are just not willing to do that right now. They have a lot of injuries. They have a lot of things that they have to also touch up on. When you go and see Mason Miller on the trade block, you definitely have to go and try and get him. However, the price is just going to be a little bit too high, in my opinion. I think the Yankees could be in on Tarek Skubal if he becomes available. The Tigers have lost a couple games recently. Don't know if they're going to sell just yet, but they feel like they're ready to contend for a World Series somehow, even though they are under 500 right now. I think that's going to be an interesting talking point heading into the next couple days. Will the Tigers finally decide to sell on Tarek Skubal? If they do, I think the Yankees will be involved. I don't know if they'll pull the trigger. They have a lot of belief in their starting rotation so far, but you can never have enough pitching. It's said time and time and time again, especially heading into the months of September and October. I think the Yankees will be involved, but that doesn't mean they'll necessarily pull the trigger, whether Miller or Skubal becomes available. I think the biggest talking point for the Yankees in this trade deadline is what they're going to do at catcher, and Ryan Jeffers has been the biggest name available on the market. The Minnesota Twins are likely to sell on Jeffers, who's been really solid so far this season. I think the biggest talking point is what's going to go the other way for the New York Yankees over to the Minnesota Twins. I've seen trades involving Anthony Volpe in exchange for Ryan Jeffers. That's just something that the Yankees are going to have to think about, and I don't know if they're going to sell on him just yet, Volpe, that is. I think they have some guys in the rotation or in the bullpen that they can sell on. They also have to maybe get another bullpen arm on the other side of it. There's a lot of scenarios. I think the biggest upgrade they need, though, is at catcher. Austin Wells, even though he homered the other night, he's been pretty bad offensively so far this year, and that's putting it lightly. Batting under 170 right now in the Yankee lineup. He has to be so much better, and I think the Yankees need to get an upgrade. A right-handed catcher, preferably. Jeffers fits that, and I think the Yankees will absolutely take him in a deal if they can get the right price for him. So the Yankees looking at catcher. I think they're also looking at another bullpen arm, like I mentioned. If they can get one, a cheap bullpen arm, there's a lot of relievers on the market, one of them being on the other side of town, and Luke Weaver, who has another year of control. But I don't think the Yankees will go to that just based on Weaver has just been up and down every single year. One year he's phenomenal, the next year he's bad. And you saw that last year when the Yankees were in the playoffs. They relied on Weaver, especially in that series against Toronto, and he completely blew up in the postseason last year. So we'll see what happens with the Yankees. I think they also need another outfield arm or an outfield bat, whatever it is. They have a couple of injuries out there, a couple of big ones. Cody Bellinger, Aaron Judge, not available right now, and the Yankees need to pull the trigger on whether they get another bat. And I think outfield is probably the best spot for it, just based on the injuries. They're probably not going to have Judge back till close to the postseason, and I think Bellinger will not be rushed back by the Yankees. Also, really looking at the Yankees, they're in a spot right now where Tampa Bay's still ahead of them, but they still have a lot of fight in that AL East division. They want to win the AL East. They want to have an easy path to the World Series in the end, but they have to win some games, and that's a tough task when you don't have a fully healthy lineup just yet. So I think the biggest target is catcher. Then you go with a relief pitcher. If Tarek Skubal becomes available, the Yankees, I'm sure, will be in on him. That's not to say that they will get him if he does become available on the market. And I think an outfield arm is definitely something that's needed, especially with the injuries that the Yankees are dealing with. So we'll see what happens. Make sure you tune in to Thursday's episode as we'll go even more in depth ahead of the 2026 MLB Trade Deadline. But on the other side of New York, the New York Mets were also in action this weekend, and it's been a tough stretch of games for the Mets as they, after the All-Star break, had to face off against the three top teams in the National League right now, or three of the top teams. Of course, Atlanta is one of the top teams in the National League, and they have to play them next. They played Philadelphia coming off the All-Star break, and they ended up winning 2 out of 3 in that one. Then they went up to Milwaukee to face against one of the best teams, if not the best team in all of baseball. They're right there with the Dodgers going back and forth for the best record in baseball. Mets lose 2 out of 3 in that one. And then they welcome the Los Angeles Dodgers, one of the toughest team, if not the toughest team in all of baseball. And the Dodgers end up taking the first game of the 3-game set at Citi Field. That was on Friday. It was 4-2 was the final. Roki Sasaki with one of his best starts of the year. That's back-to-back really solid outings for Sasaki after he really struggled, it seemed, early on. And Sasaki ends up pitching 7 innings in this game, 3 hits allowed, just the 1 earned run with 2 walks and 9 Ks. It was a mistake to Luis Robert Jr. in the second inning that ended up going into the seats in left, and it was 1-0 Mets at that point. The Dodgers respond to sac fly from Miguel Rojas, the hero from last year, and then, of course, Shohei Ohtani hits a sac fly when the Mets just played some bad defense, and it did not help out their bullpen. It did not help out Sean Manaea in this situation. He goes 6 innings, 6 hits, 1 earned run with 2 walks and 3 Ks. But it turns out that all the runs ended up being earned for the Mets, and one of them was to Brooks Raley. Of course, with Ohtani with hitting the sac fly, that was off Raley, and Raley gets charged with the loss in this game, moving to 4-5 on the year. Kyle Tucker ends up continuing to torment the Mets so far this year. He hits a 2-run bomb. And of course, Kyle Tucker had just 7 home runs heading into this series. We'll get to game 2 in just a moment, but he hits a 2-run bomb in this one to give the Dodgers a 4-1 lead. Alvarez responded with a solo shot, but that was all the Mets had in this one. Tanner Scott comes in for the save, and the Dodgers win it 4-2, the final. Then you go into the second game of the 3-game set, and the Dodgers win this one as well. Yoshinobu Yamamoto on the mound against Nolan McLean. What a pitcher's duel this was. And Yamamoto did not have his best stuff. 6 innings he only goes. I mean, this is a guy who went 9 innings, a complete game against the Yankees just a couple games ago, and he goes 6 innings in this one. 5 hits allowed, just the 1 earned run with 3 walks and 5 Ks. That's what really separates Yamamoto from some of the solid pitchers until you get to some of the greatest pitchers. I mean, he is so phenomenal that even when he doesn't have his best stuff, he only goes 6 innings, 100 pitches it took him. He had 3 walks as well, and it's only 1 earned run. I mean, most pitchers would take that in a heartbeat if that was their outing. They were struggling in an outing, and they somehow go 6 innings, 100 pitches, and 1 earned run. I mean, he'll take that every single time, even though he was, of course, wanting more in this game, but it seems that Kyle Tucker wakes up when he plays against the New York Mets. He has 9 home runs now this year after he hits a solo bomb on Saturday. 3 of them have come against the New York Mets. It's just unbelievable. And of course, Tucker was a guy that the Mets were really interested in during the offseason. We're completely in the race. And then, of course, Tucker chooses the Dodgers in the end. Not a great year so far, but he ends up tormenting the Mets. 3 home runs of his 9 against the Mets this year, and this one came off of Nolan McLean. 6 innings, 7 hits, 2 earned with 2 walks and 7 Ks. Not a great outing for McLean in the end. It was 3 runs with 2 of them, or 4 runs with 2 of them being earned after Brett Beatty did not help him out. Hits a ball off of Dalton Rushing's head where he threw it off of his head and into left field. Francisco Lindor had a chance for a double play ball, but it just did not go the Mets' way, and they end up losing 4-3. Tyrone Taylor, give him credit, hits a 2-run double to get the Mets close in the 8th inning. 4-3 it was at that point, but the Mets cannot get anything going in the 9th, and the Dodgers continue to beat the Mets this year. 4-3 is the final on Saturday. But then you go into Sunday's game, and looking at this Dodgers team that is just sitting so far over 500, 29 games over 500 at this point, and they go into the final game of the 3-game set, and it was pretty good for the most part. Emmett Sheehan ends up going 5 innings in this game, 3 hits allowed, just the 1 earned run with 2 walks and 5 Ks. Freddie Peralta on the other side was pretty terrible in this game. Once again, it only ended up being 3 runs with 2 of them being earned, but the ERA only went down 0.02, and that comes down under 5, and it's ending up at 4.99 right now. Not a great season for Freddie Peralta, and he talked about it after the game. We'll get to him and the trade block in just a moment. But looking at the Dodgers, they end up getting a really solid outing out of Sheehan. It was their bullpen that really got trucked. And Tyrone Taylor, once again, you think this game is over. Once the Dodgers go up 3-1, it's still the 6th inning. But of course, you've watched the Mets this year, and there's not a lot of hope when they go down, especially against one of the best teams in all of baseball. But how about the Mets fighting back, and Tyrone Taylor was at the heart of it. Hits a 3-run bomb in the 6th inning into the left field seats that scores Benj and Robert, and Taylor ends up hitting his 8th bomb of the year, a huge one at that point. And then in the next half inning, A.J. Ewing scores on a pass ball, with then Marcus Semien just a couple batters later ends up hitting a 3-run bomb of his own to give the Mets an 8-3 lead. It did get a little hairy at one point as Luke Weaver was on the mound, allowed a couple of hits, and it was bases loaded Luke Weaver gets out of it, and the Mets win it 8-3, the final. Give credit to the Mets. They had a lot of fight in this game, and Tyrone Taylor, a guy that could be available when it comes to a trade pretty soon. Maybe that's somebody that they can dish off right now. He is smoking hot right now in his last couple of games, or his last 18 games since coming off of the injured list. He is batting .382 with an OPS of over 1,400. Really good stuff from Taylor right now. It's just the guy who's coming in as almost a backup behind Juan Soto, who's now on the injured list and is going to be out for a large portion of August into September. I think Tyrone Taylor, if he does stay, could be an impactful bat for the Mets. But right now, I think they should probably get the most for him on the trade block. That should be something that we'll talk about in the next couple of days. We'll see how that goes. But the Mets end up losing 2 out of 3 to the Dodgers, but ended on a positive note, and Cionel Perez ends up getting the win. 2 strong innings with no hits allowed against a tough Dodgers lineup. He gets his 4th win of the year. But the Mets now head into another tough series, this one back at Citi Field, with the Atlanta Braves coming to town. And Atlanta, of course, in first place in the National League East this year, a couple of games ahead of Philadelphia. The Braves have been playing good baseball lately, and they have a tough series, or a tough pitching matchup tonight, as Zach Thornton takes the ball for the Mets, and he's been really, really good recently. Zach Thornton, 1-1 on the year, a 1.93 ERA, one of the bright spots so far for the Mets this season. The lefty takes the ball against Martin Perez, who's on the other side, 6-6 with a 3.338 ERA for Atlanta. 7-10 start tonight. Thornton against Perez, and then you got a tough matchup for Christian Scott tomorrow. He has to face off against Chris Sale on the other side. So we'll see what happens all series long. Make sure you tune in. The Mets continue on this homestand, a 9-game homestand, or a 10-game homestand, excuse me. Dodgers, Braves, and then they got the Marlins on the weekend. So we'll see what happens. Make sure you tune in to that one later. As far as the Mets trade deadline, there's going to be a lot of moves to be made, and I think a lot of it will come in the starting rotation as well as the bullpen. Looking at the available pieces, you're thinking Luke Weaver, who has an extra year of control, will be on the market, and he will definitely go before the trade deadline. Clay Holmes, an interesting one right now, based on he is available, it seems, by the Mets. He's not going to sign an extension, but the Mets need to get some value for him. He's been so good so far this year. Of course, has not played since the middle of May after that fractured fibula off the bat of Spencer Jones, but he's going to be on the market, and you also have Freddie Peralta on the market as well. Not going to get the price that the Mets were looking for heading into the year. It's not the same pitcher Freddie Peralta is this year. 4.99 ERA, and he has to bounce back for one of the contending teams that he ends up going to, because that's really where it's going to end up. And Freddie Peralta not going to get the price that the Mets are looking for, but they're going to have to deal him no matter what, as he is a free agent, unrestricted at the end of the year. AJ Minter, Brooks Raley, both on the market as well. Couple of lefties in the last years of their contract, and I think that's going to be interesting where they go and what the prices will be for those two guys. Of course, then you have the bats, and that's going to be the biggest question. It doesn't seem like the big names are going to be gone. Lindor looks like he is staying for another year. Doesn't seem like the Mets will get the price that they're looking for if they were to trade Lindor. But there are some bats right now, Luis Robert Jr. being one of them, that if the Mets can end up trading him, they will absolutely do it in a heartbeat. He has not been healthy this year, not at all what the Mets expected when they traded Luis Angel Acuna for him. And they also have Tyrone Taylor now, who is smoking hot. He's going to be on the market, it seems, as well, with a phenomenal batting average in his recent games since returning from the injured list. Can he be a valuable piece for the Mets to deal off before the deadline? So the Mets, looking at it right now, If they deal off Luke Weaver and they also deal off Freddie Peralta, you're saying that's step one. Then it comes to the next couple of guys in Minter, Raley, Clay Holmes could be in that group. That's step two. If you get something for the bats as well, Luis Robert Jr., Tyrone Taylor, can you get a package for those guys as well? Get this prospect room going once again and get this farm system back to where it was just a couple of years ago. The Mets have some young guys in the lineup right now that have been so good. AJ Ewing and Carson Bench, and those guys, of course, coming from the minors just in the past month or so, and with Ewing's case, the last couple of months, and then, of course, with Carson Bench starting the year in the majors this season. Nolan McLean as well, Zach Thornton in the rotation. Christian Scott has been so good recently for the Mets. So looking at it, what will the Mets do? I'm curious to see as the Mets head into trade deadline 2026. Let's finish things off today in the world of basketball as there's only one place to go. LeBron James officially signs a 2-year, $8 million contract to join the Philadelphia 76ers. He joins the super team that they're building down in Philadelphia. Jaylen Brown right next to him, the guards up top with Tyrese Maxey and VJ Edgecombe, and then the big man down low in Joel Embiid. The biggest if for this Philly team, can Joel Embiid stay healthy? That's a big if considering the last 3 seasons he has not played a lot. You look at 23-24, 39 games played, then 24-25, held to just 19 games, and then last season, 38 games during the regular season. He did come back in the playoffs, but not really healthy at all. And of course, Philly gets knocked out by the Knicks in 4 games last year. They do add LeBron James, so it takes this team to another level. I think the question, though, is if LeBron James is there and Joel Embiid is not, this team cannot go that far. Jaylen Brown will take this team to a certain level, and I think he'll definitely lead this team into the playoffs and probably into the second round. The question after that is when they face those tough teams in what is now a pretty tough Eastern Conference, you look at the teams that have gotten better, can Jaylen Brown get this team over the top alongside LeBron James and Joel Embiid? If they are missing one of those guys or 2 of those guys, they are not getting close to it. That's a big question mark for Philly. Joel Embiid's health has always been a question mark, it seems, in the last couple of years. Now it's at the biggest moment because he does have LeBron James there to help him out alongside Jaylen Brown as well. LeBron, it's a big move for him. I do like it from LeBron's standpoint that he's trying to win a championship. It does hurt his legacy just a little bit, in my opinion, that he does go to a team that is big time and is stacking their roster right now like Philly is, choosing almost the easiest path to win a championship. If he chose one of those teams in the West that it was a little bit tougher to get through, I would respect it a little bit more. But I think Philly, looking at it in the end, they are one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. They are not the toughest team, though, because that tough team still lives in New York, the team that won the NBA title and only lost 1 player from last year's roster, one impactful player, and that is Mitchell Robinson, who, of course, goes to the Boston Celtics. But the Knicks replaced him right now in Andre Drummond. That's not going to completely replace the loss of Mitchell Robinson, but it does enough for this Knicks team. Of course, it's also a backup in Mitchell Robinson, a backup in Drummond behind Karl Anthony Towns. The Knicks still have to feel really good. They're coming off a championship, and they still have a very, very dangerous roster in the Eastern Conference. There's a couple more teams sitting around there that are not even being talked about in the Eastern Conference. I think a lot of people are counting out the Boston Celtics right away just because Jaylen Brown is not there. They've lost a couple of more guys. Jason Tatum, when healthy, is one of the best players in the NBA. And I think he can help lead this team alongside Derek White, alongside Peyton Pritchard. They add Mitchell Robinson down low. If he's able to stay healthy, they still have a really solid roster up in Boston and a team that definitely can contend in the Eastern Conference. You also have a couple of teams behind them that are not being talked about at all. The biggest one, in my opinion, the Indiana Pacers, a team that really struggled a season ago, of course, with the injury to Tyrese Halliburton. He tore his Achilles in the playoffs the year before in the NBA Finals, and then he goes into a year where he cannot play. And Indiana ended up being really hurt by it. They end up getting Ivica Zubac midway through the year to try and get this team going. And of course, they end up not getting a high draft pick. They have to wait for another season with LA ending up stealing the pick from Indiana, disappointing in the end for them. But they end up with a team right now of Ivica Zubac, Tyrese Halliburton when he comes back from that torn Achilles, and still Pascal Siakam, along with a couple of guys off the bench and the rest of the depth pieces that Indiana has that they've kept since the couple of years ago when they defeated the Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals, lost to the OKC Thunder in 7 games in the NBA Finals. I'm looking at Indiana saying this is going to be a tough team to get through, and I think Philly's going to see that. I think the Knicks are going to see that. I think Boston's going to see that. Also, not even mentioning Kawhi and Toronto, who are definitely a tough team to go up against. Kawhi still playing at his peak right now, feeling really good, and back in Toronto where he won a championship, of course, in 2019. I think this is going to be a tough Eastern Conference. So LeBron does come here. Kawhi also comes here. There's some tough teams to face off against for the Knicks. I think they'll be just fine, though. Still my favorite in the Eastern Conference, considering they haven't lost many guys from last year's roster, the only one being Mitch, and they are trying to replace him already. They already feel like they've done that from last year. So we'll see what happens, but looking at it, LeBron James goes to Philadelphia, and it should be a real battle in the Eastern Conference. Will LeBron James lead Philadelphia to their first title in 44 years? We'll have to wait and find out. The biggest if, will Joel Embiid be on the floor for Philadelphia this year for a large portion of this season? We'll wait to find out that, but it really all comes down to that with LeBron James going to Philadelphia this offseason. So LeBron signs a 2-year, $8 million deal with the Sixers. He's going to play the Knicks plenty of times this season, and we look forward to that in the 2026-2027 NBA season. But that will do it for episode 174 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast. Please subscribe below. I've been Zach Malum, and thanks for watching, and talk to you all on Thursday.